So I'm being told that we're meant to start. We're meant to get going. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. My name is Rafael Peralta, and I'm the Regional Director of the United Nations Environment Program here in Washington, D.C. And I'm delighted to be here today on a balmy day, a bit of an unusual weather here in D.C. for this time of the year, but to discuss a topic that is absolutely critical for every country, but also in particular, obviously, for Ukraine. Now, the country is facing an extraordinary challenge, but if I dare say so, also an extraordinary opportunity. Since the full-scale invasion of the country began in February 2022, the country has experienced massive environmental destruction, from damage to its water, from pollution to its air, from pollution on its land, from damaged forests or agricultural lands. The country is facing a staggering amount of natural resources and wealth that will need to be rebuilt over time. Now, it is clear that the long-lasting legacy of this war on the environment will be very meaningful, but the question is whether this could be turned into an opportunity. Now, ultimately, the question before us is, will the people of Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, and its partners move towards rebuilding the country the way it was before, or will a different path be chosen? One that perhaps will be more resilient, that will be healthier for its people, and perhaps even more secure. And that is precisely the question that the Green Recovery Platform for Ukraine is trying to answer. The platform was launched back in June 2024 at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin. And it was launched in close consultation, obviously, with the government of Ukraine and the Parliament of Ukraine. It was developed by 3 international organizations, our very own, the United Nations Environment Program, but also very, very much with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, in close partnership with the G7 partners and with civil society in Ukraine. The proposal had been originally made in 2023 by the then German Minister for the Environment during a visit to Ukraine, and was subsequently embraced by the government. We at UNEP are delighted to support our Ukrainian partners by leading the day-to-day coordination of the platform, and I'm delighted to be joined today by our head of our country office, Pierre Carlos Endai, who is leading the charge on this, and we're very grateful for his tireless work in this regard. Now, the platform exists to do something that sounds perhaps simple, but that it is profoundly difficult, to ensure that the recovery of Ukraine will not be just fast, but that it would also be green. The argument is a simple one, is a relatively easy one to comprehend. Green recovery is not a luxury, it's actually an economic necessity. And this is a conversation that is happening pretty much across every country in the world, whatever their circumstances may be. For anyone who has been to the World Bank spring meetings, not far away from where we are, people may not be using the word green, people may not always be using the word climate, but everybody's using the word resilience. And that lays at the core of the question that is facing Ukraine. Now, today's panel is going to bring some eminent voices on this matter. We are delighted to be joined by Her Excellency, Ms. Daryna Marchak, Deputy Minister of Economy, of Environment and Agriculture of Ukraine. Also by Mr. Jurgen Keinhorst, former Director for Eastern Europe at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. We're also delighted to be joined by Professor Scott Sklar, who is the Sustainable Energy Director at the George Washington University Environment and Energy Management Institute, as well as by, did I get that wrong?
You are perfect. You're doing a great job.
It's a complicated term.
For a guy without a beard.
I did shave before the event, and finally we're joined by Mr. Florian Blum, a senior economist at the World Bank. Now, before I start asking questions to the panel, we do have a video that Mr. Francesco, the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, has sent. He couldn't be with us here today, but he wanted to share a few reflections. So I think our friends, okay, here it is.
guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my distinct honor to address you today at the third annual Ukraine Innovation Days. Ukraine, reinvent, innovate, leapfrog. While I regret not being able to join you in person, I am pleased to contribute to this important discussion. In recent years, we have witnessed remarkable innovation across multiple sectors in Ukraine. This progress has been particularly evident in the defense sector, where new drone models are advancing from concept to battlefield deployment within a matter of weeks. What is perhaps less visible, but equally remarkable, is the rapid innovation that is transforming Ukraine's energy sector. Battery storage projects that may take 2 years to deliver elsewhere are being completed in as little as 6 months in Ukraine. Developers are adapting to new risks by protecting solar installation with drones, physical barrier, and intelligent design. Microgrid, supported by advanced digital technologies and artificial intelligence, are optimizing power distribution for communities that have been disconnected from the electricity network. Ukraine's ability to innovate at speed and scale has become a lifeline for households, business, and essential services across the country. At IRENA, we stand firmly committed to supporting Ukraine in this transition. As a global center of excellence for renewable energy, we are working closely with local and international partners to help build a resilient, secure, and sustainable energy system. Our renewable energy roadmap for the Eastern Partnership countries, developed with the support of the European Union, once again highlights the extraordinary scale of Ukraine's renewable potential. The country's technical potential is estimated at 188 gigawatts of onshore wind and 57 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic capacity. Our analysis shows that full decarbonization and energy independence are achievable by 2050 within these numbers, if Ukraine deploys 64 gigawatts of wind and 55 gigawatts of solar. Under this scenario, Ukraine could emerge as a leading regional energy powerhouse, returning as a net electricity exporter, reaching 27 terawatt hours, approximately 10 times higher than in 2021. In partnership with the United Nations Environmental Programme, the UNEP, we are accelerating on-the-ground deployment. With support from the Italian government, we are introducing the Solar City Simulator in 4 Ukrainian cities: Odessa, Rivne, Lutsk, and Poltava. This tool will enable households, business, hospitals, and schools to assess the solar potential of their rooftop and better understand investment returns. In parallel, our zoning assessment will help identify optimal location for solar development, supporting informed investment decisions for the private and the public sector. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the innovation happening in Ukraine are lessons which will shape the future of energy system around the world for years to come. I'm confident that these Ukrainian Innovation Days will strengthen existing partnerships and create new ones. This partnership will foster innovation that will be an integral part of the economic future. I wish you all a great conference. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Our sincere appreciations to Mr. La Camera. We wish he had been here today, but we're delighted to be with this panel, as I said, And Madam Deputy Minister, I'm going to turn to you first. I would like to hear from the four of you on a very simple question. What do you think, or how do you see a credible green recovery for Ukraine from your perspective? And what is, in your view, the biggest obstacle laying ahead? Madam Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Thank you for opportunity to talk about this topic. As you probably got some feeling from the length of my position, Ministry of Environment, Economy, Environment and Agriculture, or as some colleagues from international partners call us Ministry of Everything. But we are actually responsible for both topics that we are discussing today. It's the environment and economy. And one of the philosophical reasons why that merge of the topics was made and they were put in a single ministry is to ensure that while going to EU, while recovering, we really can ensure the greening and making the greening of economy and making it much more environmental friendly. When we are talking about the challenges, so first probably the challenge and the next is the way forward. On the one hand, we understand that the destructions and the damage for environmental situation in Ukraine due to the Russian aggression is tremendous. The total environmental damage, according to RDNA 5, is approximately 150 billion euros, according to the World Bank. We understand that the main areas of environmental loss include soil contamination, land irrigation, air pollution, water pollution, damage of protected areas, ecosystems, and so on. Simultaneously, we are now a candidate country to the European Union, and we have a very ambitious plan to finalize all the transpositioning of European legislation in Ukraine, including on Chapter 27 for environment by the end of 2027. And that means that we have a huge amount of legislative work that we need to do right now in order to achieve that goal. Thirdly, I think that nobody it's a secret for nobody that making economy much greener as required by EU directives and as required by our general ambition to go towards greener economy is a very costly task. Now, together with international partners, with UNEP actually, we are working on environmental assessments, impact assessment for different EU regulations and how they will affect different parts of Ukrainian economy, society, business, environment. We do not yet still have the final estimates, but we understand that we are talking about the potential need of hundreds of billions of euros in order to ensure that Ukrainian business, Ukrainian society, at the end of the day, really meets that green environmental requirement. So that is why, when talking about the task itself, summarizing, it looks like it's an enormously intensive from human resources point of view. It's a very costly task. And the task that we need to do simultaneously while recovering and rebuilding economy from the war. Last winter provided new inputs into the model, I would put it like that. Unfortunately, all of you know that we have extremely difficult winter. We have the record cold weather. It was like record in 16 years, as far as I know. And simultaneously, we had very massive attacks on Ukrainian energy system, which led to the very high deficit of energy resources right now. But simultaneously, as usual, we can look at it as a challenge and we are looking for a decision how to meet the challenge. And we understand that the best possible solution is now to ensure that we move intensively and very quickly to the greener economy via investing in decentralized green energy resources, solar, wind energy, any other of new technologies that could be implemented in Ukraine. So unfortunately, that the last winter became the very strong factor for the fast transition into this greener economy, in particular in energy sector. The question and the challenge how to ensure that we really make it very fast. Simultaneously, that provides a very good opportunity for businesses worldwide, because it's not only the demand for the new technologies, but it's also the possibility to test any kind of new technologies on the ground, the way we are doing it on a battlefield. Just without no lengthy testing process, going immediately into the game and testing the technology. So that is why I think that our job as a government to ensure that we use all those challenges as a very strong stimulus and push for greening the economy. But of course, we will not be able to do all this alone. We need a lot of financial support. We need a lot of catalytic capital from our international partners, other countries, in order to ensure that the government helps to take risks, to reduce risks for private business to invest into the economy in the wartime. We also need knowledge and finally skills, because ensuring that transitioning of economy to the greener format needs not only investments per se, but also knowledge how to ensure, how to redesign every single business process in a country, policy making, the way ordinary people work, the way buildings are built, and so on, in order to meet all those new criteria. So please, we are very thankful to our international partners for coming with all those ideas and this partnership as well. And we really really rely on your support in this very important task. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Jurgen, could I turn to you?
Yeah, thank you, Rafael, dear Vice Minister, dear colleagues. And I would like just directly to follow up what the Vice Minister said, as this has been a reason for the German government in the run-up to the Ukraine recovery process conference in Berlin in 24, that our judgment has been that the environmental aspects in the recovery were underestimated. So, and you could hear it also this morning. There were a lot of talk about business opportunities, also in the field of infrastructure. The big point is that with energy, transport, telecommunication, and so on, you can immediately see that there is a business case. But who is willing to pay for wastewater, for waste, and such things? And then, of course, you can formally make an argumentation to say that is requested to become member state in the European Union, and the environment acquis for the EU is the investment heaviest among all directives. So we are talking not about billions, we are talking about more than 100 billion in this regard. And we know this from the accession process in the Central and Eastern Europe, so with Poland, Romania, and so on, that it takes very, very long time. And if you don't start at a very early stage in your conceptual approach to include these aspects, then you're becoming lost. And insofar, this was a political argument to put it on the agenda and to set up this platform where we have the chance to meet today and to explain a little bit on this. We have also a booklet provided by UNEP. You can take it with you to address these points. Second point, it's extremely important to do it in a whole of government approach. So that was also, we started this initiative from the environmental ministry. From the very beginning, we said we have to do it together with economy and with regional development, territories, and in principle also finance and social. We had a good point, and we were very convinced that we could do this. We have heard a lot about the resilience and what was achieved over the last 3-4 years during the war. We did together with IFC and also together with the EU Commission the Energy Efficiency Fund for Ukraine. So this has a track record now for 10 years and is still working in war times. So to say, yes, we can really under difficult circumstances work in a critical area, that energy efficiency in the housing sector, that's also not a business case if the people is only paying 20 or 30% of the real costs. And that brings me to another point we in our cooperation now want to address. We want to identify the main barriers to do the investments in the field of environment. It's obvious for health reasons, it's obvious for the nature, for the restoration of the nature in Ukraine, that it should be a priority, but in these times it's not sufficient to argue this way. We have also to say that it's very relevant for business and for the economic development. So to say, there will be no investor coming to do new industrial plants if there is no infrastructure in place which responds to the EU requirements. All know about this CBAM, but it's not only the CBAM. So insofar, it's a top priority to go into such areas where infrastructure in that area with wastewater is also needed. This is one point. The other point is it means also common market access, single market access for the EU as just one example. So there's no level playing field if companies would not work along the requirements which are in the EU acquis, for example. So there's a business case coming with this. On the other hand, we are fully aware that we cannot do everything immediately at the same time, as the Vice Minister said. So it's about sequencing and prioritization. So, and this is another area where we will try to support the government to identify the priorities. Not all directives, for example, of the EU, of the international conventions. I mentioned the strategic environmental impact environmental impact. So it's UN ECE conventions, for example, have to be implemented immediately. That does not work, and even Poland did not do so. So, but you cannot go on the other side and say, yes, it takes everything 20 years. So to discuss with the government and the experts what should be done to meet all these requests, this is one of the main tasks we intend to address. And then also to provide business opportunities, for example. I will leave it due to the time limits to that point. We could consider that's something your colleagues this morning mentioned, to cluster industrial sites. So we have an experience in Germany after German reunification to go to the brownfields. They have all the infrastructure in place. You have to do something for the environment there. But as you have the infrastructure there, you could go there and make an industrial zone which is responding firstly to the EU requirements and give a specific access for such companies going there to get earlier access to a common market in the EU. It's not discussed so far with the EU, but I mentioned this only as an example why via our platform we would like to address such opportunities which are not only directive specific, they address all elements in the recovery process. That's not an easy task, it's obvious, so not to talk about the tariff reforms and social compensation, this all has to be addressed, and that we are not talking only about concepts, I can tell you that we are now setting up a project together with the government to address with pilots in the public investment management approach of the Ukrainian government to identify such options, but also the barriers which we could then address. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott and Florian, over to you. I promise to distribute water to the panel if we keep it short.
Okay, I will try.
Only then.
The extraction and production and use of energy is the single largest cause of air and water pollution on the planet. It is the single largest user of fresh water on the planet, more than agriculture. It is the single largest conduit for terrorism on the planet, and it is the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases. At this very point in time, natural gas turbines, generation turbines, are 4.5 years backlogged and cost 250% more. That will not go down for quite a while. Utility scale transformers are 4 years delayed and about 3 times what they cost 4 years ago. So this idea that we are all going to sing in harmony and dance into a large centralized brittle grid is sheer nonsense. So what is the trend on every continent and in almost every country, actually including Ukraine, because I'm involved in a lot of these projects, are what are called blended on-site distributed energy systems. These are usually mixes of renewables, many cases tied to legacy, smaller conventional energy systems around, tied to energy storage that can seamlessly detach from the grid when it goes down, which is becoming more often everywhere, and then if things stabilize, attach to the grid seamlessly. Now, we have self-healing grids in communications. We lose cell towers every day. Does the cellular service stop? No, the other cell towers triangulate around it. We have solar satellites. Every 4 years, they fall out of the sky. The other solar satellites triangulate around it. And of course, we have fiber optics. And that blended system allows to do the same thing. It is a global self-healing grid. Data centers are actually the same thing. Aside from relying on that, they themselves, immediately, if they go down in nanoseconds, other data centers take up the work and do it. What we were trying to do or evolve to is not hark back to how the grid started. That's nonsense. We need to create smarter, self-healing grids. The good news about this, even in times of war, is that your country has some of the best IT specialists on the planet. So you already have the knowledge and capability on the inner workings on how to do that. You as a country, but also a lot of your allies, are world leaders in solar, wind, biomass, the water technologies, geothermal, and even waste heat to create energy. But the issue, the elegance, is not looking at them separate. That's ridiculous. What you want to do is elegant blended solutions. I am here to tell you they are cost effective all over the planet. I have projects on every continent, including Antarctica. They work fine. And there is a core of your economy, which again, people don't hire me or bring me in because of my nice beard. They bring me in because they either have a power outage or they have power fluctuations that ruin what they're doing. You can't grow computer chips. You can't do a lot of things with fluctuating power. So all of a sudden, the biggest countries in the world are going towards these microgrids. And I'm stressing to you that I left a giant PowerPoint of pictures and links for you to go walk through if you want it, but to find out what to do and how do we build that. You would never think of now putting in a copper wire network and looking for financing. You would never do it. And so I am here to tell you that the future of energy that the entire world is moving to is these blended technology solutions that seamlessly interact and attach and detach from the grid. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've heard a lot about engineering, about investment. Let me make the macroeconomic case for the green recovery and an argument why we should care not just about investment and physical things on the ground, but about economic policy around this. Ukraine today has a GDP per capita of 12.5% of the European Union's average. That's much lower than any country that has ever joined the European Union. Poland had 25% of the EU's GDP per capita when it joined in 2004. That means that Ukraine needs to grow, and it needs to grow much faster than it has done at rates that it has in the past. This year, we project Ukraine will grow 1.2%, which is very close to the average growth rate before the war. At those rates, it's going to take the country about 40 years to reach 25% of the EU's GDP per capita. That is too slow to be competitive in the EU market, to meet Copenhagen criteria, and to attract the investment it needs to thrive. From a green recovery perspective, that poses a challenge. On the one hand, faster growth means the economy is larger, there's going to be economic intensification, probably the risk of higher resource intensity, higher emissions, and so on. So that's a risk that needs to be managed. On the other hand, and I think that's the good news on the green recovery, is that Ukraine has undergone already striking economic transformation, not since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but in fact since 2013. So if you look at export baskets, in 2013 they were dominated by agriculture as they are today, but also by heavy polluting industries, steel mills, chemicals, and so on. Since then, there's been a very gradual, slightly accelerated shift since 2022 towards services, higher value-added technologies, and lower energy and pollution intensity products. The economic policy challenge in the green recovery is to lock in and accelerate this transition, to make sure that growth, as it happens, is clean and leverages these new technological advantages. We've done some work on identifying possible future sectors that can help grow, and these are typically sectors with very large green co-benefits, renewable energy. We see some of the military innovations that are around here that aren't particularly polluting. So there's real opportunity there, but there's a need for economic dynamism to make this transition last. The barriers to this today that still exist are real. So even though there has been a slow transition, a gradual transition, there are still lock-in effects that are visible everywhere. Legacy investments, legacy capital stock that locks in some of these things. Incentives, for instance, in the district heating system that don't provide strong incentives for household and residential consumers to reduce their consumption. Right. A private sector that to a certain extent is subdued by a large state footprint, limited competition. You can find many areas in which there are barriers to this transition. So the opportunity here for the green recovery is to use the reconstruction momentum that exists to rebuild the capital stock, to bring in new reforms, to leverage the EU accession, and to make this work both for an economic transition, but also to make sure that economic transition accelerates this process towards more sophisticated both products and services that at the same time achieve the green dividend. Like a proper German, I stayed on time, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Florian. Madam Deputy Minister, I'm going to turn back to you. We just heard about reforms. Obviously, reforms are hard. We all know that. But would love to hear from you about what do you see as the most urgent reform that the country needs to undertake to unlock green investment at scale?
It's a very hard question, actually, because, we have, together with the World Bank, we developed a very long to-do list, what needs to be fixed in the legislation, and also we have the EU integration, National Plan of Adaptation of Legislation, And only for environmental part, only for 2026, we have around 10 different major reforms that we need to develop. That is why the question of prioritization is very important, but unfortunately I think that we are not in position to skip something if we want to proceed quickly. Although still, we are talking about a couple of major questions. So the first question is general deregulation, and although, for example, in other sectors like general business regulation, we are quite advanced. For environmental and for energy, I think that we have a lot of things to do, and sometimes we need to find a balanced position between rather, I would put it, rather strong regulation that we have in EU directives and understanding how we need to reinvent the business and the new technologies for Ukraine here and now. We also need a number of other steps. And the first one is chemical safety reform, which is very important, environmental finance reform, ecosystem services and restoration of war-affected ecosystems, greening in public procurement. But on top of them, I think that still deregulation of the way the government works. And for example, you talked about the need to review and to fully rebuild heating system, water system. All of this is about municipalities, and we come to the corporate governance and state-owned enterprises reform, which is actually about how we ensure that the players that we have on the market are efficient, they have competition, and they actually provide the best possible value added for every hryvnia or dollar that we provide them. So I think that it's very difficult to prioritize. We actually requested such support from the World Bank on a business environment reform, and probably we can make the same kind of exercise for the environmental reforms.
Thank you. Not an easy task for sure. Jurgen, let me come back to you. Where do you see the greatest alignment and obviously also the greatest gaps between Ukraine's recovery priorities and the European green transition frameworks?
So the best message is that there's full commitment on the level of government to undergo this. The problem is this mass of directives, requirements internationally, also related to the EU accession process. And there's some misperception from my point of view that everything has to be done within 5 years. So, and this is also a misperception, I think, if I'm allowed to say this, within the government, but we have also to discuss it with the European Commission on prioritization, as this is the biggest issue. And mainly, but this is not really a new problem, is the missing cost recovery in the relevant infrastructure sector. So if there is no cost recovery, then there will be no private investment. Even the banks will do nothing in this regard. So they do it now if there's 100% coverage by a donor. So this way, it will not work. But we were successfully in the energy efficiency field in the housing sector to start at least such reforms. And if we address this also in the water sector and in the waste sector, together with compensation in the social field, as it will not work without social compensation, and to find a timeline to do this, and this is more than 10 years, then we will not make the progress, and no investor will come, not only for the infrastructure, but also not to invest in new facilities, as there's a need to have such an infrastructure available.
We're going to come back to you, Deputy Minister.
Yeah, just I think that I would like to provide some sense that it's not that black and white, and it's not only about tariffs. Because if you just imply higher tariffs for an inefficient supplier of a service, you will have rather high tariff without the need to decrease the cost efficiency. That is why all this is very linked. It's about the way the services are financed, it's about tariffs, and it's about governance.
Scott, we're coming back to you. You were already talking about distributed networks or grids now, or blended rather. So can you talk a little bit more about what we have learned in this respect in Ukraine and beyond? And how do you think we can plan for a sustainable, reliable, and resilient energy system in Ukraine?
My problem about energy is that we look at energy as something unto itself. It's actually not. Energy just makes other things happen. So if we're looking at resiliency, meaning no interruptions, which hurts economic growth, by the way, as well as comfort, that means we have some industries that cannot be interrupted. There are slurry industries that have grains or plastics and pipelines that just cannot stop for a minute. Chip growing, food processing, things like that, where you just must have energy. So let us focus on the weaknesses within the delivery structure of agriculture, the weaknesses within our healthcare systems where we absolutely need reliability, the weaknesses between our communication systems to keep our cell towers going and switching gear going. We have a whole set of things in our society that must continue. And what I'm talking about on these on-site microgrids they are economic now. The whole world is moving in that direction. You're in a war. So obviously, and I know, we must have continuity at the local level. The other nice thing about distributed generation is it's local, meaning you don't have to wait 10 years for some giant project which costs billions and billions of euros to do it. If it makes cost effectiveness, we can attract capital. I attract private capital in the middle of the poorest countries in Africa. So I have attracted private capitals in Ukraine. This is not impossible if the sense of the approach makes something else work better without interruption at lower cost. That's what we're talking about here. So this is a global trend. I'm not saying you become the experiment, but if we want to build economic growth in Ukraine, you need energy for everything we do. Absolutely everything. And even when the war ends, you're still going to have intense weather patterns and problems with getting traditional fossil fuels or uranium. So I'm here to tell you, focus local, look at blended solutions, and look at small blended investments. And small investments done quickly and a lot can equal some of these bigger investments that will take years, and Professor Sklar will be much grayer. So that's my view.
Thank you. Florian, I'm going to come to you, but I want to let the audience know that I'll open it for Q&A in case anybody is going to have any burning questions after Florian answers my final question. So I want to keep you thinking whether there are any questions you're going to have for the panel. But Florian, so obviously the private sector is going to have a key role to play. And how do we ensure that it doesn't become a constraint or a sort of an obstacle to a green recovery, but rather a driver of it? And where do you see the strongest complementarities between the private sector work, and how do we make sure that we unlock those?
Yeah, thanks. So I think the green recovery challenge is really a challenge to make green action an opportunity for the private sector and for growth. I think the most obvious area for this is the power sector. So Ukraine's power system is built around a set of large generation assets, legacy assets with transmission and distribution lines that are very vulnerable. And we've seen that over the last year almost. We've seen that Ukraine has been hit by a dual shock, first to the domestic power system in 2025, and now added on top of this a global fuel price shock. We see this already in the macroeconomic numbers coming out of Ukraine. We see the power prices rising, we see producer prices rising, and we see industrial output dropping substantially in February, and we see high frequency indicators pointing to an economic recession. So there's a clear need to look at the power sector. Back in March, we spent a lot of time talking to plenty of firms in Kyiv and around Ukraine to ask them about the situation and what drives this. Every single firm, no matter the sector, be it IT, be it milk production, be it agriculture, computer parts, every single firm tells us their primary investment is cogeneration or renewable generation that they produce for themselves. Yeah. So that's the prime investment target that they have, because for all of them, as Scott mentioned, for all of them, no power means either a loss of production or a complete stop to production. All of them also mentioned to us, and I think that's the first policy challenge and policy implication that needs to be worked on, that they face either regulatory or physical issues with connecting to the grid and feeding in some of that power that they produce. So I think that's a very obvious low-hanging fruit to bring the private sector into this transition and design the right economic policy instrument to make that argument. The second reason I think that can be made to work here is sort of green action as a necessity, and I'm thinking mostly about CBAM here. CBAM is a clear sort of incentive mechanism for Ukraine to take some of this action. EU market access is not optional for Ukraine, and working around the system is key. And then I think the last and most important point is to recognize that Ukraine has the potential to be an innovation marketplace, a place where innovation can grow and thrive. And we see this, I think, in the tent over there, and in very select sectors. So when you look at payment technology, when you look at military defense technology, when you look at government technology, I think Ukraine is one of the few countries in Europe. In fact, we have a colleague who got married via an app, with her husband being in a different location.
That could be profit.
I had to go to the German registry office 4 times to get married, so it's much more complex. So Ukraine has the potential to thrive and innovate. Green is a clear area for this. There's a big market. 27 EU countries have to comply with green directives. They're all looking for innovation to help that transition, to make this as cost-effective and as cheap as possible. So there's lots of demand. There's an export opportunity, and there's an innovation ecosystem that can bring this. The reason we only see this innovation happening in select sectors is because those are the sectors where the conditions are right for the private sector to innovate. That's because these are sectors with secure demand, clear assigned property rights, long-term returns, where the conditions are right for that sector to move out of the shadow and into the light, into the formal economy, where there's no large either private or public incumbent that keeps them out. So this is a lot about competition, but and where they can attract people and capital to help them. So the goal for green action, or more broadly for growth, is to make sure that these conditions for innovation thrive across the economy.
Thank you, Florian. I'm turning to you in the audience to see if we have any questions. I see a hand up. We'll get you a microphone. Oh, okay, it's coming.
During the Second World War, Germany experienced a great deal of devastation. What can Ukraine learn from Germany's experience post-World War II that will help with rebuilding?
Who wants to take that? Obviously, we have Jurgen.
Jurgen's right here, the man, the legend.
Jurgen, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So indeed, we had 2 times not the same quality of experience, but with German reunification in 1990, we had maybe a situation which is a little bit more similar in the environmental field than it has been in 1945. So it was about the framework conditions in 45. It was definitely the US support with a Marshall Fund program and something like this. So we can learn from this, but now there are other times. No? So we do need other instruments. This is one point. What we can really learn is, and this is an experience from the 90s, so with the German reunification, how important it is to have a well-functioning administration. So it was underestimated in 1990 when we went to GDR regions. But the big success was not only the money, it was also to have functioning administrations by that time. And then the other point is about sequencing. So not to do everything at the same time. So it's quite often better to build a fence and to don't touch upon such areas. So that's here in the Ukrainian case, it might be the areas with the mines. We had it with the old lignite areas, very dangerous areas. So it took 15 years to address this. But firstly, to do the investments in the areas where we can build up new industries and create new jobs. And I think this is something where we can be supportive also for the Ukrainian government to identify the areas and the legislation which should be addressed to start with such activities. So, and it's not just about environment, it's about resilience, and it's about common market, as I said, and new value change, and so on, and so on, and so on. And frankly speaking, we have this public investment management program from the Ukrainian government. It's also on prioritization there, and it might be that we should have a more deeper look into the criteria for prioritization, also to reflect such environment-related aspects which are also relevant for industries.
So we're about to hit the time, so I'm afraid that there's no more time for any further questions, but I do want to turn to the panel and see any burning last words, starting from you, Madam Deputy Minister, any message that you want everybody to leave with today?
Yeah, we discussed a lot prioritization of efforts, and I think that the priority is very clear and emergent one. It's the decentralized green energy system that would benefit both economic development, livelihood of our citizens in another year, in the next years. And of course, it will help us to make a huge step forward in order to greener the economy.
Thank you. And anybody else?
Just one sentence. So, German government believes in Ukraine, and we will continue support, definitely. And with such activities as with this platform, but there are many others. So we have spent 1.2 billion bilaterally in the energy field so far, not to talk about all the military and other budgetary support. But this is important to have a narrative, and I think such events as this one, they can really contribute to bring this spirit forward. Thank you.
Think small, speed, and transforming. Cellular phones, laptop computers, the idea of not giant computational buildings they were thinking of. You have the technical capacity to do it. This is the chance to do it.
Well, I think in that same spirit, in the World Bank's RDNA, we often talk about building back better. So suggesting that we shouldn't be rebuilding old assets, but if an old coal plant is destroyed, we should not be building a new coal plant in the same location. We should be building something green. We should think the same way about economic policies here. So the recovery and the policy framework needs to be modernized and aligned with these with the EU principles, but also with the green growth agenda.
Yin and yang, right here. Good job.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to the panel. It's been a pleasure. And I'm not going to try to summarize everything. We're past the hour, but I want to thank everyone for being here with us this afternoon. And as you heard, there's a great opportunity ahead of Ukraine. Let's seize it. Thank you very much.